It's now time for the Sports Love Life Show. Let's join Jamie King and Dr. Judy Ho.
And good evening, everybody. Welcome to our second edition of the Sports Love Life Show, along with licensed clinical and forensic neuropsychologist and renowned expert when it comes to relationships, Dr. Judy Ho. We're welcoming tonight on the program Vanessa and the Hawk, Andre Dawson. And I tell you, Judy, how blessed are we? Week one, we have arguably one of the greatest NFL players ever to play, there's no question about it, from Chicago. And also now one of the greatest baseball players to ever play the game, and Andre Dawson, Hall of Famer from Chicago. We got a Chicago theme going, and we're not going to break it up. But Judy, I know you're excited to have them both on tonight.
Oh, I can't wait. And thank you so much, Andre and Vanessa, for taking time and being with us tonight.
It's a pleasure.
My pleasure, Doctor.
Well, Judy, talking to Andre and Vanessa, their love story, 42 years in the making. And we want to go back and let them talk about this. They met early when they were both 15 and 16. Andre, Vanessa, take it away. Talk about how it all started for both of you.
Well, obviously for me, I was 3 years older. And I think I first took an interest in her when I was in high school and about to leave and go away to college. And it never really manifested itself because I was going away. I went to Florida A&M University in Tallahassee, Florida, and she still had, her schooling at the high school level to complete. And we pretty much didn't really keep in touch the entire time that I was in college. And we reconnected when I was drafted and I had already made it to the big leagues and I was a rookie. And the way it all played itself out, I won the Rookie of the Year award. And mind me now, she's only 2 blocks away from me.
Right.
And there still was no reconnect at that point. But I was invited to the opening of the Coconut Grove Playhouse. I think the play was Sergio de Bergerac.
Cyrano de
Bergerac. And it was red carpet, antique car driven, grand entrance, media, all of the above. And I didn't have a date. And it was actually my sister who made the recommendation. She said, why don't you ask Vanessa to go with you? Because at that point I had thought about taking my sister as my date. And I mulled it over and I just initially didn't know, how that would go over or how she would react. And it took about 2 weeks for me thinking about it. And I would walk to the neighborhood store from my mother's house and I would have to pass her home.
Right.
And I would see her out. And at that point, she had a car. She was washing her car.
Brand new.
She was detailing her own vehicle, but I would walk by and just speak and keep going. And finally, one day I built up the nerves. I said, let me go over and let me do this and get it over with. She's either going to say yes or no.
The Sports Love Life Show is brought to you by Dr. Paul Ross and his Amazing Foot Cream. Amazing doctor, amazing cream. Give your feet the very best with Dr. Ross's Amazing Foot Cream. It's the Sports Love Life Show with Jamie King and Dr. Judy Ho.
And she didn't hesitate. Right off the bat, I got the confidence to say, I'll ask her, will you do me the honor of going to the opening of the Coconut Grove Playhouse with me? And I think at that point, she kind of was familiar a little bit with my background and my status, right, where I was. And it was on. We went to the play itself. And from that point, we just casually started talking. And before I left to go to spring training, I just built up enough nerve. Now, mind me, I was shy, quiet, and I wasn't confident in, approaching and, trying to talk or start a conversation, not alone a relationship.
Right.
And we casually started talking. And from that point, we started dating. And before I knew it, I bought an engagement ring, and this was quick. This was very quick. And I think the reason I did that is because my rookie year, I would put a lot of pressure on myself. And I had made it to the big leagues. I'm on this big stage. I had a lot of success growing up, success in the minor leagues. But it was a different animal playing in the big leagues. And I would go back to my apartment, and I put a lot of self-inflicted pressures on myself. And I just came to the conclusion that I need someone to come home to after the game. And when we reconnected, and it was a brief 2-month period, I made the determination that this is going to be my wife. Wow. It was brought to my attention anyway that she made the comment, he's not going to get away this time. So I went and bought an engagement ring, and everything was so fast. I mean, I approached her mother first. I didn't say anything to her father. And her mother gave me her blessings. And it was such a huge relief because I knew we knew each other, but we didn't have a lot of background together. But this was someone that I felt very confident in. Besides the fact that, I was who I was, she was homecoming queen in junior high school, homecoming queen in high school. So I said, well, she has that tag queen behind her. So, that's a plus in itself. But I knew very early on that, this is someone who I knew I would enjoy spending my life with, and I wanted to be my wife.
Wow. That's a great story. And real quick, the one thing before we started the show, I asked you, and I'll let the whole world see this. I asked you the question, who's right most of the time and who runs the show? And you said what? There you go, Judy.
The Sports Love Life Show is brought to you by Mission Belts. No holes, always fits. Isn't it time you join the mission? Welcome back to Sports Love Life with your host, Jamie King and Dr. Judy Ho.
You gave the answer.
That's amazing. So Vanessa, what was that courtship like for you from your perspective? I mean, were you taken with Andre right away too? And did you feel like it was fast, or did you feel like it was just right for you guys and for your pacing in your relationship?
Well, I had boyfriends and they were immature. And, when I met him, it was like super nice. And I couldn't have asked for anything more because he left out the part. His sister used to braid my hair growing up. Mm-hmm. So I sort of knew him. And then when he walked right in at the right time, because the boyfriend and I did somewhat have, my parents did not like the background. And so he just came in and he fit the bill perfect from the beginning.
That's awesome. And, I think what's so inspiring, Jamie, about their story is that, I mean, you guys have been together for 42 plus years and counting. And I think sometimes it feels like in our current society, people, when things aren't working or when they run into a big bump, they start to contemplate separating. They contemplate not wanting to be together. And that just seems like a more common consideration nowadays than maybe it was years ago, or when you really look at a couple who's been together for a long time. Everybody still has ups and downs. So what have you guys done to really keep that relationship strong? And how how do you advise people who come to you and say, I'm frustrated, maybe I should quit on this relationship? What do you tell them when they ask those types of questions for you?
Obviously, every relationship is different. And I think the fact that we had a background between the two of us. We had families that had set very high standards and had values. And I look back at, my upbringing, and when you think about why we have been able to just get through the tough times and be reminded of, how it all started out. I won't say we set goals, but you got to have faith in each other. You got to believe in each other. And there's a saying: the family that prays together stays together. And we both had a background that was church affiliated. Mm-hmm. And I knew going in that I was young when I got married, and it was going to be a challenge for me because she was still in college. Mm-hmm. And she had never really been away from home. It was going to be an adjustment for her. And I had to put her in a position, comfort level, to believe that it was the right choice that she made. And I talked to people who, go through ups and downs, who experience problems, and who who obviously want to throw in the towel. And I've always been asked the question, what's been the key for you? And I always go back to the simple fact that at the outset and all the way through, it's got to be communication. There's got to be space. There's got to be situations where, you have to understand that you don't go to bed angry, even though that's happened on occasions, but you pray before you shut your eyes, and you wake up the following morning and all of that stuff is behind you. But I think the most important thing is you got to be patient. You got to remove distractions, and you got to believe in each other. You got to look back at what was the goal at the outset. Where did you want to go? What was the direction? And I knew all along, I felt that this was my soulmate. You could find your soulmate early, or you can find it later. But for me, I just knew what she brought to the table and what her beliefs were. She had that religious background. And for me, that just, it was perfect. And the fact that she was just around the block, I just, knew that, hey, this is too easy. And if it's going to be this easy, then hopefully our marriage will be easy.
The Sports Love Life Show is brought to you by Snow and their outstanding teeth whitening systems. Go to trysnow.com. Jamie and Dr. Judy love their snow kits, and so will you.
I was wondering about, in 42 years, Vanessa, you've been with him through the 7+ knee surgeries he's had, the ups, the downs, the ins, the outs, the boos, the cheers, everything. How have you managed in support of Andre through all the ups and downs of career? In his long career, when you look at everything he did throughout his career, there were so many highs, but there are down times, as there are in any professional athlete's life. How did you navigate that? How did you support him? How did you keep him up when things were going bad? How did you work through those things together as a team?
Well, I told him, we always believe that nothing good comes easy. And I always tell him, quitters never win. So you have to be able to take on this battle. I've seen the times that he had been in slumps, and my mother would call and say, can you tell him to get his eyes checked? Because he looked really bad at that plate. And then he had uncles that would call. I'm telling you, they would call him on the telephone. What's going on up there? I really don't know. He's in a slump. He's not hitting. He needs to adjust the shoulder and do this. And I'm like, you know what? Have you ever played baseball? It's not as easy as it looks. So when he would have the low times, I was his big cheerleader. So I would keep him pumped up.
Wow.
Jamie, I think what she is failing to visit is the fact that she knows I wouldn't be where I am today had it not been for her. I almost walked away from the game after 4 years of playing in the big leagues, and it was the result of having off-season knee surgery and the healing process not coming to fruition. I had a fracture in the kneecap, and as I said, the pain was so excruciating. I had to take 3 pain pills just to get through the game itself. And I can recall having a conversation with her one night. I said, I just can't do this anymore.
Wow.
And I told her, I said, I'm going to go and tell management that I'm going home.
Wow.
And she looked at me and she said, well, she said, and she was very cautious about some of the things that she would say to me. And the one thing I remember vaguely, she said, that's going to be a mistake that you will regret.
Wow.
And I said, well, I just can't do it. And I took her advice. I went to management. And it was only at that point that they decided to take x-rays to see what the problem was. And the x-rays showed that I had a fractured kneecap. And well, now they panic. They don't know what to do. And I didn't really go on the disabled list, but they just kind of monitored my playing time, that situation. And I stayed on the medication. But I had in total 12 different knee procedures during my 20 plus years of playing. And she was always there.
Wow.
I mean, I can remember the nights, the cold nights when she would go out to the local supermarket. She would get a bag of ice because I needed to ice before I went to bed. I iced after every game. I iced when I got up in the morning. And she was just that pillow that I could lean on. And that's why, I think when I look back at all of the things that have been the keys to the success of our relationship, our marriage, without her, I wouldn't be here, where I am today, because irregardless of what I may be thinking, I might say, she always have a rebuttal, a comment that makes a little sense when you think about it in the realm of things.
Right.
And, I owe everything that I've accomplished in life to 3 women. And those women are my grandmother, my mother, and my wife.
Wow. What a testament. And Judy, as a follow-up to that, we're looking at one of the greatest, and when I say one of the greatest baseball players that ever lived, right here. It's such an honor to have Andre and Vanessa. But think about this, Judy, for statistical aspects. One of only 8 players in Major League Baseball history to have 300 home runs and 300 stolen bases. One of only 5 players to have 400 home runs, 300 stolen bases. For perspective, unbelievable. And maybe none of that happens, or a large part of it, without the lady sitting next to you, Andre. And that's what you're saying to us. And I'm sure Chicago fans and Montreal fans and all the teams you played for, none of us knew that. I didn't know that. I know Judy didn't. But what a testament to your mother, your grandmother, and your wife. Beautifully said. And I guess summing it up, it's just remarkable that had it not been for her behind you, those numbers may have never happened.
Absolutely.
The Sports Love Life Show is brought to you by The Nerve Company. Never underestimate radical vision. It takes nervy to be a company this great. What does Jamie King think about that? We'll find out next on Sports Love Life.
I think it's so inspiring to hear how much you lean on each other for everything that's going on in your life, and that you keep the communication channels open and really being each other's cheerleader. I mean, those are, I think, the takeaways that I'm seeing and hearing in your relationship. And I think that that's so important. You know, one of the things that I have been talking to a number of people about recently is this idea of, you know, really being able to be happy for your partner when great things happen for them, but also being there to support them and encourage them when they're down. And you know, more and more, I'm actually seeing this, you know, very interesting pattern with people that I've talked to, people I work with in my private practice, where sometimes the couple doesn't really sound like they're on the same page, they're on the same team, you know,
Right.
and sometimes they may even be competing with one another for certain reasons. And I think that really is such a difficult dynamic, because you really should be the other person's best cheerleader, but you should also probably be the person to point stuff out when maybe they're doing something, maybe making a mistake or calling them out on something as well, because you are that partner for them that holds that mirror to them and keeps them accountable. So Andre and Vanessa, do you guys have any moments like that you can share, where maybe sometimes you've had to have the hard conversations in a different way with one another, where it's like, hey, you really have to look at this, and you know, maybe I have to be the person to show you that, even if it might not be the most pleasant of conversations.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know I'll get grief from him when we decided to open the present business that we're in, the mortuary business now at the end of baseball. And I'm like, what are you doing? Who wants to do that? And then I didn't give him the hardest time about it, but I was very concerned because, you know, this is supposed to be happy time. Now, at this juncture in our lives, you know, every week is something where it hits home. You're seeing so many deaths and so many young people, and the pandemic didn't help it at all. But in looking back, and before we opened this business, because in the beginning I wanted nothing to do with it at all. I'm like, I'm not doing it. Now I'm the secretary and I run the show. And it's like one of the best things that could have ever happened to us. I have people just pick up the telephone and say, you know what, I got your number from such and such person. Even people that I went to junior college and college with, I guess I made a good impression. I was nice. I'm now serving their families. In the beginning, I would have said this could never possibly happen, but it's actually happening. So I was against it somewhat. And I might as well say I wasn't against it, because the money was already going out to change. And next thing, we are the owners of a mortuary.
And I'll tell you what, Judy, their mortuary, the Paradise Memorial Funeral Home in South Miami-Dade, the community of Richmond Heights. And Andre was on my show, my radio show, and we talked about this. We had a similar fear about funeral homes. He laughed and I laughed. Whenever I'd have to go to a funeral, I never drank the water. Water fountain. I never touched that door handle. I never shake anybody's hand. I was always worried they'd come over like, oh, he's a size this or that. So I stayed away from those people. I got in there, got out of there, paid my respects. And he told me, he laughed. He said that was kind of his take on it. And now, from one of the greatest baseball players to ever live, he's now serving his community with his wife at his side, helping people in their time of pain. And Andre, I just have to ask you, through the COVID, and that's when we first started talking together about what you've been through, you have done so much for people throughout the entire state of Florida, and outside of that, you both have. You have to be so proud of surviving this pandemic and being there for everybody in your community. Can you speak to that, what you have done together, you and your wife, and what your whole company has done to lift people's spirits up in their worst times?
Well, Jamie, summing up, it hasn't really been easy. It's been challenging, but we've always tried to put our best foot forward. And the toughest thing with it being COVID is you got to try and make sure that you're keeping your staff safe, in addition to keeping the public safe.
Right.
There's certain protocol that you have to adhere to. And we weren't really inundated with COVID cases, but we had a lot of people that were passing away at home because they were afraid to go to the hospital. Right. So you're not sure now if they've been tested, if they have COVID, or if they, why they passed. And the challenging, part of it was getting the families to buy into, this is where we are. This is what the times are like now. And the services can't be that they were in the past.
Right.
We can't accommodate you because of what the protocol is. Right. And it's tough to really sit a family down and get them to understand that. Right. But there were some that were reluctant, but then there were those, many of them, that kind of knew, okay, and understood. And I look back at the past year, and like I said, trying to keep people safe, because that's first and foremost, right, going forward. And think about where we are today. We withstood the challenge. Right. And the thing that I'm most proud of is how far we've come in the 12 years that we've had the business. Right. I've always felt that it's a spinoff of the church itself. And what I tried to do was make sure my staff consisted of people that had that kind of a background, people that knew how to communicate with the families. And I wanted to make sure that they understood that I am about quality and professionalism, not volume. And each and every family is going to get treated the same way. We're talking about a family that is, experiencing their worst time in their life. And we have to really dig deep and help get them through the process.
I'll tell you what, remarkable. And before we get off the air here, I just want to ask you, when you look at your illustrious career, and when I say baseball royalty, it doesn't even start with you, because you're so much more than royalty. You're one of the greatest to ever pick up a ball and glove and a bat. When you look at all you've done in your life, 400 plus home runs, 300 plus stolen bases, all those things, and what you've done for your community with your wife at your side, when you look at everything in your life, what are you most proud of?
I'm proud of the fact that I set out pretty much pursuing a dream that millions of kids aspire to do. And it was just a dream. And I was blessed with the talent, with the ability to persevere and perform at the highest stage that there is. I think my background, my grandmother wanted me to put education first and foremost. She said baseball was recreation at some point. Someone would take notice and you just move on from there. But I've always had an inkling to work with youth. I work with younger people. And what baseball did was allow me to develop a lot of friendships and learn how to interact and get along with individuals. And post-career, know how to make the adjustment whatever direction you went in life. As I mentioned earlier, I was humble as a kid and very quiet, but that opened up the element for me to communicate with people and to be comfortable with them. And I've always wanted to make the difference in the life of a younger individual, make an impact on their life. And what the business has done was put me front and center stage to be there for for adults, for older people, for all people that experience, again, the worst time in their life. And I never set out to be a Hall of Famer. That was never a vision. It was just to perform as well as I can, and what happens from there, it's a product of dedication, determination, hard work. So the thing that I'm most proud about is the fact that where I am now, it has to be a calling, because I could have never imagined. And I always, say, whatever it is, you just got to always put your best foot forward. And I knew early on that I had to surround myself with people who would be motivational, inspirational, and who I could lean on. And that's kind of been the principles that I've tried to conduct and live, life by. And I think, it's gotten me to where I am today.
Wow. Well, I want to thank you tonight as we close out. You're a Hall of Fame couple. Remember that always. For what you do in your community, you lift people up. Our show is about lifting people up. Too many people want to tear people down. You two, pillars in your community. You lift people up. People love being around you in terms of what you do for your community. I don't have the words. It's just remarkable. You've done it. You continue doing it. We're blessed to learn about you in depth and your love story and your backstory. And I joked with you before, but when the Andre Dawson clothing line comes out, I'm your first purchaser, as I love your attire. And as you said, you love styling and profiling. You do it the best. And one of the greatest to ever play the game on the field and a Hall of Famer off the field, both of you. We're so blessed to have you. And I thank you so much. And I know Judy feels the same.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for sharing your experience and for your service to the community. Definitely a road less taken with your second career here, owning a funeral home, but providing such an essential service for the community at a time where people deserve dignity and comfort when they're grieving their families. So thank you both for your service to our community and for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ho. Thank you, Jamie. It's our pleasure.
Thank you so much. Andre, the Hawk Dawson, and his lovely wife, Vanessa. We're going to take a timeout, come back with overtime after these messages.
The Sports Love Life Show is brought to you by Cremo and their fine line of skin creams, body washes, colognes, beard products, shave creams, and more. Cremo, astonishingly superior. It's time to hear from your hosts with their thoughts on today's episode. It's overtime on the Sports Love Life Show.
And welcome back, everybody. It's overtime. And of course, rejoined by Dr. Judy, a remarkable couple, Judy, 42 years, their love story. And I learned so much about them, and not only a Hall of Famer on the field, but the Hall of Fame couple off the field in terms of what they bring to the community. What were your impressions?
Well, I thought that they were just this lovely couple who tells it like it is, and just thinking always about how they can do more for the community. I mean, I mean, I'm with you. You know, most people would not want to go near the morgue or funeral home business. But they're doing it for a bigger purpose, you know, and I love, actually, we didn't even get to this part, but I know that Andre takes a back seat in the business, in that he's not like this public figure. He didn't name the funeral home after him. Like, it's not about glorifying him. It's really about, he serves the community behind the scenes, and he lets his wife kind of do the talking and meeting the families. And I think that's all obviously intentional. You know, this is not about him. This is a crucial time for the family to feel the love and the support, and he wants to not take attention away from that. And I also love how the wife is like, are you kidding me? Like, at first, Vanessa's like, this doesn't make any sense. But once she realized the bigger purpose, she was just all in. And I mean, I really respect them for taking on such a difficult industry, I think, because you have to deal with sadness and grief a lot, but it's for a better purpose.
Well, she said, I run the show. So that was pretty obvious there. And to hear about their love story and 42 years in the making, and the fact that his Hall of Fame career, Judy, I never knew this, but may have never happened. In 4 years, he said he was ready to tap out and say, I can't do it anymore. He said there was a stretch where his legs just wouldn't carry him. And she said, you might want to think this through. And as they always say, behind every great man is a great woman, or even greater woman. And in this case, she came through for him, had him rethink it. Had he not done, she not talked to him, he may have never reached those lofty numbers and become a Hall of Famer like he did.
Yeah, it's really amazing. I mean, again, I think it's so important that your partner is your cheerleader and really lifts you up in those tough times, but also holds a mirror up to you when maybe you've done something that is a mistake and needs to be reevaluated. I mean, I think that they really have that very open relationship where they can do that with both, on both fronts. And I don't think that that's very common in a lot of relationships. And that's certainly something to take away from that conversation. And I was also thinking, Jamie, I don't know, with people that you work with, I know that you're a motivational speaker and you help to advise people. I mean, do you kind of get that sense that people tend to want to throw in the towel sooner now than maybe even 10 or 20 years ago? Because I definitely see that. It's kind of like the grass is greener somewhere else, but they don't realize that if they stay together and really work through things, that relationship can be even better than before whatever crisis they're experiencing.
Well, that's the thing. I think sometimes, and I'm not, trying to knock younger folks coming up, but sometimes switching out and changing maybe an easier route than staying the test of time and working together and trying to overcome in some cases. And sometimes it just seems like if you change, it'll get better. Whereas some cases you just have to work together more. And I think they're a testament, 42 years, and they rely on each other so much. And I was going to ask you one question beyond that I've just been wanting to know from you is you deal with people in your private practice and you've dealt with people on your television shows that you appear on all over the world and all over the United States in terms of that are dealing with the COVID comments that he mentioned earlier about what he's dealt with his business, but people dealing with the COVID and the depressionary aspects and all the things you've had to see in your private practice. What words of advice would you give people in terms of looking at the brighter day ahead and in terms of enjoying each day to its fullest and looking at the positives versus letting all the weight of the world come on you as so many people are going through today?
Yeah, it really comes back, I think, Jamie, to mindfulness. I think that it's really hard for us to do. It's like such a buzzword these days, but that's really the importance of it. Anxiety only occurs if you're thinking way into the future or thinking about the past and ruminating on the past. And obviously we're going to do that sometimes, but if you find yourself trapped in those thoughts, it's really important to tune your mind and your body to the present moment and try to enjoy things for what they are right now. And a really big piece of that is really getting in touch with nature for a lot of people, just stepping outside and breathing the cool air and really taking in the world with your five senses, or doing a simple gratitude exercise called 3 things, where in the beginning of each day, you wake up and you say 3 things that you're thankful for, no matter how small they are. And some days there'll be big things and some days there'll be small things. But, even during the toughest of times, there's still a couple of things that everybody can be grateful for. And it's just those little tiny things that brings your mind back to the present moment and focusing on not just all of the negative doom and gloom, but also seeing the balance in life, seeing the positive side, that can really help you to get to a more emotionally regulated state. And it's really hard to do. It's easier said than done. And nobody is expecting anyone to have mindfulness 24/7, but it's more that when you notice that you're suffering, try to turn your mind and do one of those mindfulness exercises. I think that can be a huge help.
And before we let you go, so many people have been asking, where do we see Dr. Judy? How do we learn more about Dr. Judy? Can you please give some of your links and sites out so everybody knows where to look for you?
Of course. My website is drjudyho.com, and you can follow me on Instagram and other social platforms at Dr. Judy Ho. That's DRJUDYHO.
And she's the best in the business for a reason, folks. We're so happy to have her with us each and every week here on Sports, Love, and Life. And you can catch me on ESPN 1061 every morning from 7 to 8 a.m. For Dr. Judy, I'm Jamie King. Have a great week ahead. We'll see you next week on Sports, Love, and Life.